Hey, what's up, everybody? This is an open discussion with C3 Films. I am Chris of Riverdale, and this is.
Cheryl.
And today we are talking about The Grand Witcher Season 2. So, we are going to be getting into spoiler territory here. There's a good chance we'll dive into a little bit of spoilers for Season 1. Definitely spoilers for a couple of episodes in Season 2. I've watched 5 episodes. Cheryl's watched the whole thing, so we can at least only talk about up to episode 5. And then possible spoilers for the animated Witcher movie that's also on Netflix. So if you haven't seen any of that, go watch some of that stuff. It's really good, it's fun, and then come back and check out our video. But without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into it. So, Cheryl, I know for a fact that when you saw season 1 of The Witcher, you did not like it.
I did
and
not
now,
like it.
out of the two of us, you have finished the entire season of season 2, and I have only seen maybe like half of it. So, how and why? What was the change?
I don't know. I think because when I first watched the first couple of episodes of season 1, I was very confused. I didn't know what was going on. My boyfriend did tell me, like, okay, these are happening in different timelines. And I was just like, okay, well, it's very confusing. Like, I was just constantly confused about what was happening. And we watched up to 5 episodes. He finished it without me. And then for some reason, I felt like, okay, I should give it another chance. And so I watched it again. And my second time going into it, I feel like because he had explained to me that it was happening in different timelines, I was beginning to like understand it more. And so it just kind of clicked with me. And then the more I watched, the further I got into it, the more like excited I got about like what was going to happen to these characters. Like I had a lot of questions. I still didn't know what was going on, but I feel like by the time I got to the last episode, it just was like coming together so well that it was just exciting. And I actually held off on watching the last episode. I watched like maybe 10 minutes of it and I was like, I don't want it to end, so I'm not going to finish it.
Wow. Yeah, I mean I understand that. Like when I started watching it, I only knew about the video games and I didn't know much about the show itself. But I was a fan of Henry Cavill, so I was like I'll check it out. And the very first episode, the final fight of the first episode sold me on the rest of the show. Cuz that final fight, the choreography in that season 1 episode 1 is top notch. And it's unfortunate you don't really get to see a fight like that happen again, but it was so good that I was like, okay, I'm watching the rest of the show. And then the rest of the show, it was decent. And the different timelines I was able to catch on to, and I liked that it was not in your face about the fact that it was happening in different timelines. It just did it, and then there's little dialogue cues and things like that that can help you figure it out, or the fact that a character's alive in this scene, but they were dead earlier, and that's the context that they give you to figure it out. It trusts that you as the audience are smart and you can put it together, and that's why I think I liked it even more. Despite the fact that I know a lot of people did levy criticisms towards it. But it sounds like your first viewing, you were like that dock worker in season 2 that was giving Yaskier trouble, talking about, oh yeah, it took until the 4th verse before I realized it was 4 different timelines.
Yes, exactly. See, that's why I wanted you to watch up to episode 4, because I was like, that's when Haskier comes back. And, or because I actually kind of forgot about him, but then when he came back, I was like, oh my god, this is awesome, because he's like my favorite character almost, because he's like the comedic relief. So I feel like I just got even more excited, like in episode 4, because I was like, hey, the band's back together.
I didn't realize how much I missed him. I felt like Yennefer when Yennefer saw him when she was underneath that floor and then she heard his voice and she just smiled, and when I heard his voice I recognized who he was too, so I smiled as well, and I had that same kind of emotional beats as Yennefer went through. Even when she went upstairs and saw him and then went and gave him a hug, I wanted to give him a hug, and I was just like, I miss you. I forgot about you, and it's so great to have you here. I love your songs too. The Bard, yes.
Right.
So it's great.
And The thing about him though is he makes a lot of references to the first season. And
Yeah.
so if you hadn't watched the first season recently, you might be a little bit confused about like what he's referring to. And I think some of the other characters also make references to season one happenings before and like how people know each other.
Yeah.
Like people that didn't meet in season one are now meeting in season two. And so I guess you're just kind of keep track of like, wait, who knows who and how did they meet? And Husker does make a lot of references to like stuff like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, another thing about that was like I had actually forgotten that Triss and and Geralt knew each other because so when they meet each other again, he's like, "It's good to see you again." I was like, "When did you guys meet?" And it took me a while because I was like, they didn't meet at the Battle of Sodden because he wasn't at Sodden until after it was over, and I know she was in Sodden fighting alongside Yennefer. So I was like, "Where did we meet Triss?" And then when they start talking about how he was helping a priestess, and I was like, "Oh, that's the Striga episode. That's right. Triss was there. Triss helped Geralt, and when they were trying to deal with the Striga." Okay, and so it jogged my memory. But I did not watch season one before going into this, and season one's like what 2 or 3 years old at this point. So there were some things that it took me a second to remember, but I was happy that I at least was able to remember through the context of what they were saying.
Yeah, so I watched season one about a couple months ago, like back in March, I think. So it's still relatively fresh in my mind. And so I think that helped a lot with just understanding what was going on. Because there's a lot of lore in The Witcher 2.
Yeah.
And so I guess like it could be very confusing if you don't have any background. I feel like I was following okay with like with the stuff that's going on in season two, but it's still a little confusing. But it's linear this time mostly, so in that sense, it's easier to follow because everything's happening kind of in chronological order. It's just really confusing because of how they are giving you little bits and pieces of information at a time in a linear way as opposed to not chronological. So I guess that's kind of like the cool thing about season one is the fact that it wasn't linear, right?
Right.
It was just all like these different timelines happening and then converging at the end. And in that way, it's a very easy tool to spoon feed you a little bit of information at a time. But in this season, they do that too, but not with messing with time. It's just kind of like spoon feeding you. Like everybody is withholding information, and I think that's how they are doing the spoon feeding, and it's driving me crazy.
Yeah. I mean, I still like every time. It's always a style thing, but so I think that season two is stronger for being linear. I think it has a nice focus. So it does feel very easy to follow in comparison to season one, and I do like that about it. And I also like that they still keep with letting you know how much time has passed through character interactions. Because we see Yennefer in like I think it's in the first episode. Like we see her and she's captured and everything, and then by episode I think three it is she ends up back with the rest of the mages, and when she's talking to the mages, she says, "Yeah, I was a prisoner for a month." But we saw her in 2 episodes, and it's like, oh, you can forget that time is passing for these characters differently than how we are observing it. And rather than the show just tell you, oh, 1 month later, it just has the characters say, hey, look, I was literally a prisoner for a month just now, and I was not happy. So and like I like the fact that we get a sense of how much time is passing, and there is a lot of time passing in a short amount of episodes. We get that information through character dialogue, so I like that.
That is true. Yeah, and also the progress of series training helps a lot with telling the time too. By the way, it was really funny when the guys bring her to that obstacle course and they like are putting her down and telling her she can't do it the whole time, and then like later on they're like rooting for her and
I
like giving her
know.
advice.
I love it. Like it caught me so off guard. I was like, oh, okay, stereotypical jerk guys that don't like her, blah 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 blah, whatever, whatever. You don't belong here. But in the same episode, when when girl's coming up, that same guy that was giving her crap is just like, you're doing this wrong. You can do this. Try doing this. Stop showing up. I'm like, what? And I love the relationship that the other Witchers have with Ciri. I love how they're almost kind of like the aloof older brothers, and like they show that very well. Like this show is also doing character interactions very well. When Triss first gets there, and then Ciri for the first time, there's another woman in the place, and she decides to like wear like girl clothes and wear like her hair out and things like that. And the guys being like a bunch of roughnecks look at her like, why are you dressed like that? Like that's not how you fight. You can't fight looking like that, blah blah. And they give her so much crap, and they're not even thinking about it, and it bothers her. And Trish notices and says like, what's wrong with you guys? She is still a girl, and there's still things that she's going to want to do. So, and they feel bad when they actually get called out on it. So they're not just jerks for being jerks. They're basically older brothers that are just trying to make fun of their little sister because it's funny, and they're like, hey, she'll get over it. But once they called out for having done wrong, they're like, oh crap, yeah, we don't want to make her feel bad. So I like that about them. It's really, I thought that that's a very cool dynamic that they didn't have to add, but it's cool that they did.
Yeah, I definitely feel that they did a lot of character building this season, but they still had like the perfect balance between character and action, which I think is hard to do. And to throw it on top, they also have excellent score. Like their score is so top notch for like. I see your reaction because like I know what you mean. Like the score is just so good that it's like how do you concoct this for a TV show? Like, is it from the
I don't
game?
understand how the score is consistently good, because the score in the games, if you ever heard like some of the soundtrack from the games, they're like the same level of quality, if not better. So when I came to the television show, I wasn't sure what to expect, but the fact that the show is also just as consistent is like mind blowing to me. It's crazy good.
Is it the same as the game? The same music?
It sounds like the same music, but I don't think it's the exact same. It's probably different, like composers and stuff like that. But if you were to listen to the game, like if I played like some music from the games and then played the music from the show and put them side by side, you wouldn't be able to tell which one was from which.
Okay. That's cool. I like that they try to keep the show relatively consistent with the games. I think it's a smart idea because most fans are probably fans of the game,
Right.
and it was a book too before the game, so there's already a big fan base for The Witcher. There's a whole bunch of different groups of audiences that they have to appease to, and I know the books obviously don't have like a solid visual representation, but they do in the game, and I've seen the game, and I see that they tried very hard to keep in the loop with the game in terms of visuals. Like there are parts of the show that are directly from the game, which I think is awesome because then it pleases those who have played the game. And I haven't read the book yet, but I heard that it's closer, like the story is closer to the book than it is to the game, so
Nice.
it's a lot of coverage there.
Yeah, and like one of the things that I also feel like they improved on as far as the show goes is when I saw season one, while obviously it's a medieval dark fantasy world, in season one we don't see too many monsters. We see like the Striga in one episode, we see a dragon at one episode, but a lot of the stuff that you see in the first season feels almost kind of budget, and I think we see like a giant like spider tentacle monster thing in the first episode, but like we don't really get to see too many monsters. But when you come into season two, it's almost like they want you to know that they got money, because right off the bat we are talking about some freaky, really good CG monsters that they are going to have to go up against. The Bruxa, and I think it's called, in the first episode, and there's this really creepy moment where her head turns around and her arms go behind her and things like that. The like her face when she's roaring and things like that. When they show the Leshen or the other monster that was attacking after Ciri, like they really stepped it up when it comes to the monster department, so that like, yeah, this is a horror fantasy, and there are monsters that will kill humans on a regular basis, and these Witchers are tasked with killing them.
Yeah, I agree. Although I did think the CGI, I think the quality of season one is still really good as well. I felt like it was pretty much movie quality. Just very like as a whole, season one was very top notch. I think.
Yeah.
And then going into season two, I think they definitely stepped it up as well. Like you said, there's more monsters. There's more like fighting the monsters. I would say that I think the combat choreography and the way that it was captured was better in season one than in season two, mostly because they spent more time making it kind of raw. It was more like it was less flashy, I guess you could say. In season two, it's really flashy. There's a lot of slow motion moments. Um, I think I don't know if you got there yet.
I haven't seen
But
too many slow motion moments, but yeah, I haven't seen. There's been fighting monsters, but it's been really quick scenes. So I haven't seen like a long fight yet.
yeah, there's less. I feel like there's less fighting, probably because they're spending more time with the character building and the lore. Because there's a lot of lore now being explained in this season. So yeah,
Yeah,
there's just a lot going on.
no, you're right. And speaking of that lore, one thing that I was not expecting to have happen was to have so many references to the animated movie within the season two. Like it it felt like something where if you did not watch the animated movie, you're fine. They're making reference to something that is just a part of the world, which is cool, and there's a lot of things that happen like that. But if you've watched the movie, it feels pretty cool to know exactly what they're talking about. And it's not like a passing mention. They are constantly bringing up what happened when Geralt was a little boy and Karamir, or whatever it's called, was like originally ransacked, and Vesemir was the only one that was left alive, and everything that was used to make Witchers was destroyed, so they couldn't make any more Witchers after that, and now Vesemir is stuck with all these orphans. Like they talk about it a lot. They basically summarize the entire plot of the animated movie over the course of a couple of sections of dialogue, and it felt really cool to be able to remember what happened. So I like the fact that they took the time to actually animate that part of the story so that when season two came out and they referenced it, we knew what was happening.
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, I know you've seen it, but I don't know if a lot of people have watched it because it's
Right.
animated, but it's very good. I feel like in terms of story, it keeps up with the Witcher television series, and it's definitely worth watching because it's kind of like an extra background on the history of Witchers. And I think that it helps a lot with understanding more of the lore because again, there's a lot of lore in season two, and that helps a lot. I do also hear that the books have a lot of lore in it as well. That there's like a whole, like one or two books to read before you even start the story.
Jeez.
Yeah, of Geralt and Ciri and Yennefer. So that I'm kind of I think that's also why I was hesitant about reading the books because I know that I'm gonna have to start with all that lore first. Um, but I think it's true. Like those references, you don't need to have seen all this extra stuff or read the books or anything to understand, which I think is good because then it can appeal to a wider audience. The show,
Right.
but the lore itself is very interesting. I think.
It is. And you also start to piece together certain things. Because I keep talking about the conjunction, and I keep wondering, is the conjunction something that we've seen before and all this other stuff? But as they talk more and more about it, it doesn't matter because you understand what happened back then and how it resulted in the world that we have today. Because the world of The Witcher is one that is filled with all types of monsters, and it's just a regular thing. Like And I love the fact that this world is so ingratiated in fantasy, so that it is a regular it is a part of regular everyday knowledge that you could be walking through the woods and a leshen might kill you. You could be doing something and well, demons are extinct in this world at this point, but there's other demonic monsters out there, and there's still elves, and there are trolls, and there are dwarves, and like that's just the world. So I really like the world that has been built. And then even there's even history about how the elves have been abused by humans and all this other stuff that they make reference to. So you're right. There's a lot of lore that is doing some heavy lifting in season two, but I feel like whenever you flesh out a world like that, it just makes it more interesting to be there.
Yeah, definitely. It kind of reminds me a lot of Lord of the Rings because
Yeah,
obviously there's a lot of lore in Lord of the Rings as well. And they even make like little references that you don't really need to know about in Lord of the Rings. So, so it's
sure.
kind of like just like building on like the more you know, the more interesting the show becomes. So it's like layered. Like you can go deeper and deeper if you want to, or you can just like enjoy the show without like looking into anything more.
Yeah, absolutely. And this the other thing that's really cool about season two for me is that it feels like it has a very direct focus. Like, obviously, when you look at season one, you look back and you know that it is a story that has different timelines, but at times you could make the argument that it felt a little meandering because it almost felt kind of episodic, where it was just the monster of the week or like the adventure of the week, and then where next week it's a different adventure. But season two feels a lot more serial, where there is an overarching problem that is happening, and there's overarching goals that are trying to be attained, and each episode leads you through that, and that's exciting to see when you are thinking about the fact that witchers have been extinct, but now maybe we can bring them back, or you're thinking about the fact that monsters are appearing and they're new breeds of monsters. Where did they come from? What happened? And then you realize that ties back to like season one. It feels like a lot of things are being like strung together in season two, and I think that's part of the reason I'm so excited to get back. I'll probably watch another episode after we're done with the show because I want to see how this story is developing, and I think that is one reason why season two is really. I'm not saying I don't know that it's. I mean, I guess I want to say that I think that it is a very much improved version of season one. Even though I like season one for what it is, I feel like maybe the ease of being able to watch it and understand it makes season two probably is going to be more appealing for more people.
Yeah, I definitely feel like season one was a lot slower, although I did enjoy the way they structured it because I
Yeah.
thought it was clever. Um, and like you said, it was episodic, but it still had the overall main storyline. In season two, I feel like it kind of started off episodic. By the way, I heard that the books are like that, so that's probably why. Like it's episodic.
I
Um,
see.
but I did think that the first episode of season two was a weird way to start the season.
Me too.
I wasn't a huge fan of that first episode, and when I watched episode two, I was like, I feel like this is how season two should have started,
Right.
because it's more. That's when it really starts to begin. See, like that first episode, I just feel like it was more of a well, this is how they are together, and we don't really know what they're up to or what's gonna happen to them, and what's in line for them.
That's a good point because the first episode it's about a friend of Geralt's that we've never met, so we don't really know him. And yeah, that episode does feel like a Monster of the Week type episode, and it almost feels like it's an episode that they had because they realized they wouldn't be able to have it afterwards because of the fact that they'd be at the Witcher stronghold after that, and there's no reason for this episode to take place. So they're like, this is the one time that we can like kind of do this. But yeah, you're right. It does feel kind of weird because I agree that it really feels like the story starts the moment they get to the Witcher stronghold, because that's when you start meeting the other characters. That's when you see Vesemir. That's when the plot starts to come into play. That's even when they start to show more of Yennefer in that second episode and what she's going through with the dreams and the witch with many faces or whatever she's called. So yeah, that's a really good point. I agree.
Yeah, but after that, once we get to that second episode, that's when it really starts to kick off. So, but they ended the first episode in a very interesting way because you have Yennefer and friend friend
Frangilla,
friend friend
Frangilla.
Frangilla. I know what I'm talking about. Frangilla, they're like with the Nilfgaardian soldiers, and they all get like harpooned away except for the two of them,
Yes, like what?
and that's how it ends. And I'm like, so go like watching that first episode, I was like, oh, it's gonna be a slow beginning. It's gonna take a while to get into the heat of the story. And then it ends with that, and I'm like, oh, okay, I must see the next episode now.
Right? And so actually, so we haven't gotten to, man, we've talked about a lot already and we're starting to come up on time, but we haven't really got to talk about Yennefer too much and her journey. So we come into this story and Yennefer has lost her powers from what she did at Sodden, tapping into her chaos at the behest of her, I forget that woman's name, but one of her mage trainer, like her Vesemir, basically. And yeah, and then she loses her powers. So she's going through this kind of journey or struggle of what is her identity if not a mage. What do you like? What do you think about that so much? Because we talked before the show, and we were saying how like if you were to play the Witcher game, you'd want to play as Yennefer. So it sounds like you really like Yennefer. So like, how do you feel about her point in the story so far?
Well, I it's hard to say. Like, I don't want to give too much away because I finished the whole season.
Right.
Um, but I do feel like she, I don't know, she's just a strong, like, person, I guess you could say. I do feel like when she gets angry, she's annoying because, like, just be reasonable. But I just like the idea of her, like, being able to handle herself on her own. Just being a strong female character who can handle herself with or without powers. Because she's also very clever. And I guess, like, I kind of like the whole. I like the way women are represented, I guess, in this show. Because even Siri is a strong person as well, and she wants to be like just like the boys, like, or not just like the boys, but she's less stereotypically feminine, and she, I don't know, like, I can't put words to it right now. but
Yeah.
but like, and I guess I also just like Yennefer because she is not, I think she's like mixed. She's like, she seems like she's kind of Indian and something else, so like that's different.
Yeah, for sure. No, yeah, like I like Yen a lot. I like the actress who plays her. But I also like seeing how she tries to. I like seeing how she operates in a world where she can't use her magic, because she was so powerful in season one. There was nothing she couldn't do. But one of the coolest scenes that I've come across is in episode 5 when she saves Jaskier from another mage who's able to wield chaos fire by pretending to be a drunk. And I love how Jaskier immediately catches on and plays along right away. There's no, like, when you see in other television shows or movies where the guy takes a moment to be like, well, what are you doing here? And then takes a, and they finally get it. And they're like, oh, yeah, 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 yeah. Like, the moment she's there, he's playing along. This is my wife. Don't hurt her. Blah, 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 blah. So the guy just lets his guard down. And when he pulls that flame out and she's pretending to be a drunk, all of a sudden, even her pretending to be a drunk had purpose, because she was going to burn this dude with his own fire. And that was one of the coolest scenes. I loved seeing that because it showed how resourceful Yennefer could be, even without her powers. So I'm very curious what the rest of the show has to offer her. And I actually don't know if she gets her powers back because even though I know she's in the video games, I was thinking about it. I was like, I don't know if I remember her using magic in the video games. So who knows? We'll see. So I'm excited to see where that goes.
But yeah, exactly. That is why I asked you to watch at least up to episode 4, because there's a lot of good stuff in episode 4, and yeah, I mean Yennefer is just very crafty and strong. So like, you just gotta like her character so much.
For sure. So we are coming up on time, but is there anything else you wanted to just get out for our YouTube recording?
Yes. Burn, butcher, burn.
Oh, yo, the end of that, at the end of episode 4, where he was singing, but we got to hear the whole song. Like I was already liking the song when I heard it when he got shown, but when they ended the episode and they actually played the song and they made sure you listened to it because the watch the credits / go to the next episode thing doesn't come up right away. You're forced to sit there and listen for a little bit. But after like the credits thing did come up, I chose to just watch the credits so I could listen to the whole song, including what we already heard. And yeah, when you listen to those words, that is strictly about Geralt. Like no lie.
Yeah,
And
it's
it's like
such
this
a
man
good
is hurt.
song. Yeah, it's a good song, and I think like I don't know, like his. I like that they also gave him a chance to explain his character, right? When he was talking to that fire mage, and he was like, "Look, I'm a bard." He tells like this one thing happens, and I turn it into this, and like that is
Right.
exactly what he does. And that was like the relationship that he built with Geralt in season 1. So I just like how they gave him a moment to like explain himself and his character, and it was nice to see him being so successful too, and
Yes.
see like that he was able to grow and become something without Geralt.
That being said, I want him to find Geralt again. I want the two of them together.
Yeah. Well, you'll
So
just have to watch and find out.
yeah, we're gonna cut this off so that I can actually go and watch it right now. Um, but yeah, so that's gonna be it for this part of our show. But if you guys want to see more, we talk more on our Twitch channel, which is twitch.tv/C3Films. But what did you guys think about The Witcher season? Have you finished it? Have you seen like only a couple episodes? Are you enjoying it so far? Do you think it's better than season 1? Are you happy that it's more linear than season 1? Whatever you thought about it, comment below. Let us know. And while you're down there, if you give us a like, share, and subscribe. Even if you don't, though, I have been Chris of Riverdale, and this has been
Cheryl of Vengerberg. See you all next time.